When I got the call from Rick Riddle, about Christmas time, I didn't know what I was in trouble for, but he quickly got to the point, and it was quite a Christmas present for me being chosen as a Hall of Fame member here for the CGA. It's getting on late in life for me right now, and at 72 or 73 years old, it's quite an honor for me, and I very much appreciate Rick and his committee for their selection. And congratulations to Don Padgett. It's a thrill to be inducted along with you. You know, I met your dad in 1984 when he was out at Desert Mountain, or Desert Forest. No, Desert Highlands. Sorry. Skins game. Second year of the Skins game. And just met him, didn't really get to know him at all. And then in 1987, I got a phone call from Ron Kaufman. Ron Kaufman was the editor of Golf World magazine over in Southern Pines, and he'd worked for the tour, and I was working for the tour in '87. And he wanted to know if I could come to Pinehurst, because I hadn't seen number 2 in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. So I got up here, and with your dad and Ron, we played, and I was pretty impressed with it. And at the same time, the tour was looking to establish its tour championship at the end of the year, 30-player deal on some noted golf courses. And of course, Dean Beeman, my boss, was a world-class amateur, knew everything about Pinehurst, and the ability to get that thing done here was due to your dad, Mr. Dedman, Pat Corso. Great to see him here. Beth and Brad Coker, and Bob Farron, and Paul Jett. I think there's a Jett here tonight, but anyway. The cooperation given by that team, by the Pinehurst team, made the tour championship. It helped that it was played in late October, and the bent grass greens could actually be really nice with the cool temperatures. But David Fay with the USGA came down and took a look around. But the way that the ability to set up the golf course properly late in the year really showed how great Pinehurst still was. And so your dad was really responsible. He was my guy, and it was great to get to know him. Going back to my life, my dad was responsible for me getting into golf. He never played, but when we moved as a family from Northern Virginia to Charlotte, he was sent up with 2 of his work colleagues to the IBM Executive Management Program in Endicott, New York. And it just so happened the 2 colleagues were golfers, and they knew that IBM had a decent golf course, or at least a golf course to play. And somehow they got my father out on the golf course. And he came back to Charlotte and ordered a set of clothes for he and my mother from, wait for this, Northwestern Golf Company. I think they were maybe the first mail order golf company. As I recall, as a driver, 2 wood, 3 wood, 4 wood, 3, 5, 7, 9 irons and a putter, no wedges. And the same for my mother. She didn't think much of the gift, but I played with her clubs at that age. But gradually we went and had lessons together, and I caddied for him. He let me hit a tee shot, usually on the very last hole. And after having completed Little League Baseball when I was 12 and didn't have anything else to do, I got into golf. And it became a real passion for me. I loved being outdoors. It's so quiet. I loved the fact that you could practice and play as long as you wanted to. And I loved the fact that you didn't have to find somebody else to play the game. You could go out by yourself. So it really interested me. And I just I think it's still to this day a wonderful game, and I take full responsibility for all my bad shots. I don't blame the wind, the lie, somebody making a noise or something like that. I understand it's all mine for fault, it's all mine for credit. A couple of years later, in 1965, it was a very significant year. I broke 80 for the first time. I made my junior high school golf team, played in my first CGA event, the 1965 Boys Junior at the Country Club in Orangeburg. My mom drove me down there, stayed with a family there, members, and the great Marion Moore, who was the president of the CGA, I think back in the early 2000s, beat me in the sixth flight. And I think it may have been Hale Van Hoy's first CGA championship as well. So I went a few years, played local junior golf around Charlotte and the Carolinas. And the best deal that has ever happened in my life probably was the USGA had scheduled their boys junior championship qualifying in Quail Hollow Country Club at that time it's called. $5 entry fee, practice round, tournament round. That's about $495 less than it would cost today. At Mr. Harris's club, which I was a member before moving out of town. And there was only one qualifying spot there for 14 of us. And then a fellow named Johnny Crooks, was the successful qualifier. He's of Campbell University fame. And he went out to Oklahoma and won the whole thing. It's quite remarkable. And the first time I put it on bent grass was in 1968. Because in Charlotte and the Carolinas, everything was that course Bermuda. I never realized that putting could be easy. And I managed to qualify in 68 and 69 for the US Juniors. The 68 was up Brookline, where I got to play about 14 holes with Ben Crenshaw before he tore me a new one. And then in 69, I played a little bit farther into the championship, but the CGA and Hale did such an unbelievable thing. They called my dad and offered to reimburse us for him for my airfare, both the year before to Boston and out to Spokane, Washington. So my dad's opinion of the CGA became very positive from that point on. I want to stop here a little bit, and I want to talk about junior golf in Charlotte and Carolina Golf Club. So when I was about 15 years old, and junior golf stopped at 17 then. It's now 18. It stopped at 18, it's now stopping at 19, I guess. But I was always told at Carolina about this mystery junior that was unbeatable. And I never met him, I never saw him, I just heard about him. He didn't play hardly at all, but when he played, he won anything and everything. Finally, when I was 15 and he would be 17, I got paired with him in the Junior Club Championship. And he was playing better than any of us in the group. We got over to the 12th hole, a short par 3, and he had to stand his bag up, select an iron to play to the green. And I saw every one of his Spalding top flight irons had a dime-like spot where he had incessantly hit balls forever, right in the middle of the club face, every single one. And that man is Chopper David Strong. And I never beat David until he was 60 years old. I finally got him at 60 at Quail. So in 1971, my dad and I won the CGA father-son right here on number 2. And we won it kind of a squeamish way. We played late in the afternoon, one of the last groups to finish. Shot 75, some weird form of Pinehurst alternate shot stuff. And Randy Hoff and his dad had shot 75 in the morning, and they didn't think their score would hold up, so they went home. So Hale Van Hoy told my dad and me to get out to the first tee, and he came up in a couple of minutes, and he called out the Hoff's name. With him not being there, he awarded us. I always loved Hale for that. And the Boulevard watches that we got, they were engraved on the back, 1971 CGA Father-Son Champions. My dad wore that watch for years. And I did come across it when I was going through his personal belongings when he passed away. Clyde Mangum. Clyde Mangum was, for lack of, he was my mentor. Clyde was an executive secretary, I think they called it, head staff job at the CGA. And I would see him and Pete Tufts, Richard Tufts' son, smoking cigarettes in the little lunch area back there, filling up the ashtrays with Marlboro filters. But he and Pete played a lot of late afternoon golf. And Richard Tufts lived down on the second hole, and he hated golf carts. Of course, for them to play late in the evening, they always took their own carts, but they never could play number 1, number 2, number 3. They always played. They started over on like number 9 and played in. But when Clyde hired me back in 1981 to work for the tour as a rules official, I really got to know him better because we eventually got in the office together. He moved me back into the office more. And he was so exceptional in his thinking and making decisions and having gathered the information and facts, used so much common sense. He was empathetic, and he was a great wordsmith. He taught me, hopefully he taught me that, but what he was especially great at doing was he could take what would normally take, someone would take a page to write, he could reduce that to a simple paragraph, or a paragraph into a simple sentence. So he was very concise, and I can't think of a better person to have mentored me than Clyde. PJ Boatwright, my second mentor. PJ was the executive secretary of the CGA before Clyde, and Richard Tufts thought so much of PJ that he moved up to the USGA in New York City, where he stayed until he was tragically diagnosed with cancer and died in 1991. But in the years that I was able to represent the tour on the Rules of Golf Committee and sat there with PJ and rode in the carts together at the US Opens and things like that, I learned a lot. PJ had a lot of Clyde in him, and PJ was unbelievable in a way that he could deconstruct a situation and put it back into make a sensible, the right, correct ruling all the time. And I was so immensely honored when flying back from the 1991 Walker Cup match that David Fay asked me to replace it. And the only bad thing was in New Jersey. They're not making leaves on the trees up there until about June. But anyway, PJ was a wonderful man too, and obviously died way too soon. PJ had a great story. He was a fine golfer. In fact, he played in the 1950 US Open. He won a couple of Carolinas Opens. And he told a story that while working for his father in the cotton business in Aiken, South Carolina, that he was asked to play Augusta National the Saturday before the Masters. And the member was a fellow gentleman named Bobby Goodyear, And there was another good amateur, who was a Walker Cup player who was playing in the Masters, Bobby Knowles. And the third player was Ben Hope. So PJ couldn't, he was newly married, didn't have much money. He had like $30 he took there, thinking he could cover his caddy fee and maybe $10 of lost bets or something. But when they got to the first tee, Hogan decided that the member should play with a 4 handicap, and Bobby Knowles and PJ would play scratch against them in 4-ball, $5 Nassau, and then Hogan looked right at PJ and said, and I've got you a $5 Nassau also, even. So PJ shot 74, I think, and Hogan 67. And PJ had to borrow money from the caddy master. So as I got older and wanted to play some amateur golf, I always had a very high opinion of Bill Campbell and Billy Joe Patton, Vinnie Giles. They remained amateurs, and I hadn't. I turned pro and was a miserable failure at it. And but I enjoyed meeting the amateurs, the mid-amateurs, and even the college kids, and I still have hopefully a lot of great memories and friendships from those players. Kelly Miller would be one, David Strong would be another, and even players like Lucas Glover. He was on my last Walker Cup team. He's playing so well now. So when I was nearing 50, I was haunted so much from being an unsuccessful tour player that I decided I'd give it one more try when the senior tour came along, and I was turning 50. So I got some help from David Ledbetter, and over at Chapel Hill, Dr. Dick Coop on the mental side, and later on Jim Hardy. And I somehow succeeded in qualifying for the senior tour, and even got lucky and won. I'm still searching, though, for a good putting guru. I've tried 4 or 5, and I just can't do it with them. I should also mention and thank, I had 2 caddies, both of them North Carolina boys, Mike Blewett and Kirk Rothrock. They each had 2 wins with me, and I'm so indebted to them to have the faith. By the way, that Mike Blewett, I had a 18-hole playing interview with him to see if I wanted him to caddy for me, and he beat me. So finally, so in 2004, my personal and professional lives were greatly enhanced by my beautiful, driven, and smart wife, Trish. You've been my biggest fan and toughest critic, and without doubt, you've been instrumental in any and all of my PGA Tour Champions success. I deeply appreciate all the things you did that allowed playing to be my main focus. I love you very much, and I'm sure you'll be beating me on the course, maybe even without strokes from the same tees, and maybe before you even play all the top 100 courses that you seem driven to do. Lastly, I'd like to I have one more gentleman I'd like to talk about that I got close to, and later in his life, Billy Joe Patton. I met Billy Joe in 1966. I played his son Chuck in the 1966 CGA Boys Junior. It was a Duke, 3rd flight. I had ascended to the 3rd flight. And I was nervous, not so much because of Chuck, but Billy Joe followed us the entire match. And it was much later before our paths crossed once again. And it was my first year being invited to be represent the PGA Tour on the rules committee at the Masters was, I think, 1987. And Billy Joe was on the rules committee as a member at Augusta. And it wasn't a surprise. My first year, my assignment was the 4th hole of the par 3. Not much going on there. And grandstands to the left, bamboo to the right, long hole, difficult hole. So Billy Joe and I get out there, and here comes whoever, Gene Sarrazin, Sam Snead, and a couple groups go through. And Billy Joe says, we need to get we need to bet. We need to get some bets going. He said, it's just a quarter. He said, you pick a player, and I'll pick back in the days when they were playing pairs. You pick a player, and I'll pick another player. So just a quarter. Who's ever closer to the hole? So there are 40-some groups coming through, and the gallery is listening to Billy. I'm not talking like Billy Joe. If you ever knew him, was just so exuberant. He was excited and all that. So I think we had a ball ricochet off the grandstand once, and somebody hit it against the filter in the bamboo. But at the Masters, now Jim Hyler, I assume 1 hour before the first tee time still, with the committee meeting. And the chairman of the competitions committee was a former USGA president, lawyer at Sullivan Cromwell, Ward Fauché, and he starts the meeting off with, "It's come to my attention that I've got 2 rules officials that are betting." But that's not the best with Billy Joe. So I would get up in the mountains of North Carolina, usually once a summer, and we'd always arrange to play golf somewhere up there. And Billy Joe had some health problems. He had a heart attack, and I was down at Seminole. And Billy Joe was recovering from the heart attack and was going to play golf for the first time. And we were sitting in the locker room before going out. And he said, "Yeah, my cardiologist just gave me the best report he's ever seen of a patient." He said, "You're doing so well." He said, of the 7 things I took away from your life, I'll give you 1 of them back. What will it be?" Billy Joe thought for about 2 seconds, said, "Well, I'd like to have a drink again." Billy Joe loved bourbon. And his cardiologist said, "Well, I'll do that, but a drink is 1 1/4 ounces, Billy Joe, 1 1/4 ounces." Billy Joe's response was, "Well, hell, doc, I spill more than that." Billy Joe thought a second, he said, "Can I save all 7 of them up for Saturday night?" Thank you again very much. It's an honor.